I remember when I read Lifespan, I think it was 2019. From that moment, I was like, well, I'm like 30-ish. I guess I should start taking NMN. And so I started taking NMN, and I know that many people did. There are many testimonials of people maybe in their 70s or 80s that are like, hey, after taking NR or NMN, I'm like so energetic and all of that. So apparently like they do work, but I want maybe you to explain to us a little bit more like how do they actually work?
So, when scientists discovered that NAD was this thing that we want to boost, people set about trying to find ways to do it. The first way was, well, why don't we just put NAD in a capsule and take it, and that hopefully that'll boost and replace our NAD levels. Now, unfortunately, it's not as simple as that. That's because NAD is a large and unstable molecule, so it doesn't survive well outside the body. It definitely doesn't get through the gut. And even if you infuse it using like IV infusions or things like that, NAD doesn't actually do much in the blood. It needs to be inside of the cells to have its effect. And a lot of cells don't have the little channels big enough to let NAD in because it is a big molecule. So scientists said, well, what else can we do? So this is where precursors came about. So these are NR, NMN. They are basically the precursor building blocks that our body uses to make NAD. And the idea behind those is that if you give the body more of the raw material that it needs to manufacture NAD, then hopefully it will actually turn this raw material into NAD and restore NAD levels. So, several years ago, this was thought of as the best way to boost NAD because it's a simple, quick, easy way, and it does show some degree of NAD boost when you take these types of molecules.
And that's why I think people are wondering, okay, I can see benefits, but the real question is, do they actually help longevity? Because I think that is, or better, like healthy aging, health span, whatever we want to name it. But like, do they actually help with that? Or they can maybe cause problems?
So there's been a lot of clinical trials now, many more for NR. NMN has some that have come out recently, but there's a lot more trials for NR, especially. And there's been shown, especially in preclinical studies, so in animal and cell studies, that it has huge benefits. Boosting NAD, got so much energy, that's their NAD. They've got high NAD. The other thing is damage gets goes up because as our NAD levels go down, repair gets switched off, damage accumulates, and we start to notice a lot of the signs and symptoms associated with the aging process be correlated to this NAD decline. So I think it's the reason we're so interested in it in terms of the longevity field and for aging is because scientists said, okay, so if we've got this really important molecule that's keeping our cells in good health and it declines as we get older and it causes all these problems, then why don't we just not let it decline? Why don't we, top levels back up, or alternatively just don't let it decline in the first place. So this was a lot of experiments that were done to kind of have a look at what happened if you could maintain your NAD levels. And it was found by topping up NAD or maintaining it, it had a huge host of benefits, not only in terms of at the cellular level, in terms of energy production, repair, autophagy, things like that. It also had major benefits to the whole health of the either the cells or the animal or the person that it was being tested in. It's being tested in all now. And, this was in terms of overall increased what we would call health span. So this is, the proportion of your life that you live in good health, free from chronic age-related illness or disease. So it was extending this portion of healthy lifespan. So scientists were very excited at finding ways to maybe try and boost NAD levels and reap the benefits.
If you found this video helpful and want more, then check out the full video interview with Dr. Nichola from the link in the description. While if you want to test out her second generation super innovative NAD booster, then you can get 20% off by using our code BeyondSapiens20. Lastly, if you're looking for an all-in-one solution for your health and longevity, then check out our longevity coaching program. It's a 3-month, fully customized one-on-one coaching program that will set you on the path to optimizing your health and longevity. You can learn more about it and request more info by visiting the link in the description. Thanks a lot for watching, subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next one.
As it's being used up, and this is why you begin to get a deficit. So if you look at a precursor like NR or NMN, it's ignoring this problem. So it's kind of like if you think of a factory, if the cell is a factory, you are saying, oh my goodness, production's gone down in the factory. How do we fix it? We can see all the machines are broken, but let's ignore that and let's just ship more raw material in and hope more NAD comes out the other end. You know, that is essentially what is happening. So the other thing is we now also know that that's not the only problem. The second problem is inflammation. So chronic low-grade inflammation, we all suffer from it as we get older, and we know that it causes increased expression of a protein or an enzyme called CD38 on our cells. And CD38 uses up NAD. In fact, it's a prolific NAD consumer. It uses so much and wastes it to drive further inflammation. So again, we know that we have more CD38, which is using more NAD. And again, if you think of precursors like NR or NMN, if you are boosting your NAD levels, but you're not inhibiting CD38, then it's likely that a lot of this NAD that you are increasing is actually getting used by CD38 rather than other important processes like DNA repair enzymes, which also use NAD, or the sirtuins, which are crucial longevity genes, which also use NAD. And the reason we know this is because it's been calculated that CD38 has a higher affinity for NAD than the repair processes, which basically means that if NAD is available in the cell, CD38 will grab onto it strongly and use it before any of the more beneficial processes even get a look in. So, you know, you could be thinking, oh, I'm doing this good thing, I'm using NMN or NR to boost my NAD, but if you've got high expression of CD38, that NAD is actually driving inflammation. So by not fixing the root causes, you can be actually making other things worse.
If you found this video helpful and want more, then check out the full video interview with Dr. Nichola from the link in the description. While if you want to test out her second generation super innovative NAD booster, then you can get 20% off by using our code BeyondSapiens20. Lastly, if you're looking for an all-in-one solution for your health and longevity, then check out our longevity coaching program. It's a 3-month, fully customized one-on-one coaching program that will set you on the path to optimizing your health and longevity. You can learn more about it and request more info by visiting the link in the description. Thanks a lot for watching, subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next one.